No one noticed him when he boarded the plane. That was the point. He moved through the airport like someone who had learned, over years and continents, how to shrink his presence without losing his power. Neutral clothes, no visible luxury. Number, assistance, no urgency. Just a man carrying a small bag and a lifetime of discipline. To the world, he looked ordinary. To the systems that quietly ran beneath global commerce, he was anything but. The flight was international, long, quiet. The kind of journey meant for thinking, resting, and arriving ready. He had booked first class, not for indulgence, but for space, pace to breathe, space to exist without friction. He had done this thousands of times before. He knew the routines. He knew the risks. And he knew the unspoken truth that wealth does not erase how the world decides who belongs. The moment he sat down, the imbalance was already forming. Across the cabin, a flight attendant noticed him. Not because he was disruptive, not because he was confused, but because, in her mind, something didn't add up. The seat he occupied carried an expectation. The person sitting in it challenged her assumptions. And instead of questioning those assumptions, she chose to challenge him. At first, it was subtle, a longer look than necessary, a pause, a recalculation. The kind of scrutiny most people feel but can't name. He noticed, of course. He always did. Years of navigating boardrooms and borders had trained him to read rooms faster than people realized. He recognized the shift instantly. But he did what he had learned to do best. He stayed calm. Calm had saved him before. The flight took off. The cabin settled. But the tension did not leave with the ground. It stayed thick, focused, directed. She returned to his seat under the guise of procedure, then again and again, each time with a reason that didn't quite justify the attention. Seating confirmation, policy reminders, movement monitoring. Nothing overt enough to protest. Everything precise enough to signal control. Other passengers noticed. They felt it before they understood it. A pattern forming where there shouldn't be one. Eyes lingered, glances exchanged, but silence won. It always does at first. He remained composed. That composure became the problem, because power that feeds on dominance cannot tolerate calm resistance. His refusal to shrink, to apologize for existing, to perform discomfort, disrupted her sense of order. In her world, authority was not meant to be questioned quietly. It was meant to be obeyed visibly. So she escalated. Meal service became a tool. Delays, corrections, scrutiny, no one else received. His movements were tracked. His presence treated as suspicious. The targeting became unmistakable to anyone paying attention. And people were paying attention now. Phones angled slightly. Screens dimmed. Documentation began loudly. Not dramatically, but thoroughly. She believed the cabin was hers. She forgot that evidence travels. As the hours passed, the situation shifted from discomfort to inevitability. Other crew members noticed, but did not intervene. Systems built on hierarchy rarely encourage interruption. So the behavior continued until it crossed a line. That could not be smoothed over with procedure. She escalated formally. What she framed as enforcement was, in reality, exposure. Because once authority invites oversight, it must withstand. It, and this authority, could not. The senior crew member involved found no violation, no resistance, no safety threat. Just a man being watched far too closely for no justifiable reason. That discrepancy mattered. By the time the plane began its descent, The cabin had changed. The authority she relied on felt thinner, the confidence sharper, more defensive. She could feel the shift, but didn't understand it yet. The balance of power had begun to tilt, quietly, inexorably. When the plane landed, the real world returned, and with it, consequences. Airport officials were already waiting, not because of wealth, not because of influence, but because when multiple independent complaints align, systems activate. Procedures engage. Oversight begins. She believed this would end with paperwork. She was wrong. In a private space, away from passengers, narratives were presented. First, confident, framed as duty. But confidence cannot survive contradiction. And contradiction came swiftly. Passenger statements, consistent, measured, aligned video. Footage, unedited, unemotional, damning. The story collapsed under its own weight, and then came the moment that changed everything. When the man provided identification, no announcement, no emphasis. Just a document placed on a table. The room changed, not because of money alone, but because of what it represented. Infrastructure, compliance, records. A person whose life was lived under constant scrutiny, whose existence generated trails of verification and accountability. Someone whose word would be checked hand, whose systems would check back. This was not someone who could be dismissed. Background checks moved fast. Too fast for comfort. Prior complaints surfaced. Once dismissed incidents aligned into pattern. What had been explained away before now looked undeniable. When she attempted to leave without authorization, the system responded, quietly, efficiently, irreversibly. Restraint was applied, not as spectacle, as procedure. In a terminal full of movement, everything stopped. Authority met oversight and lost. The uniform no longer protected her. It documented her. The arrest did not feel dramatic. It felt final. Charges followed. Precise, specific, grounded in evidence. Abuse of authority, discrimination, interference with official processes. Not emotional accusations, but procedural conclusions. The man was already gone, escorted separately. Process complete. His role finished the moment the system did what it was designed to do. He did not watch the fallout. He did not comment. He did not explain. He returned to his life. The story, however, did not stop. Legal proceedings moved quickly, methodically, without spectacle. And that was what made them devastating. There was no room for reinterpretation, no space for just facts stacked patiently until denial became impossible. A custodial sentence was handed down, not lengthy, but historic. Rarely does workplace discrimination escalate to jail time. But this was not a single act. It was a pattern, a refusal to stop, a misuse of power compounded by obstruction. And systems, once fully engaged, do not negotiate with patterns. The airline responded immediately. Policies rewritten. Training restructured. Reporting systems rebuilt. Authority was redefined not as control, but as responsibility internally. The message was unmistakable. Silence was no longer protection. Patterns would be reviewed. Complaints would be connected. Oversight would be constant. Across industries. The case circulated quietly. In compliance meetings, legal advisories, training modules, not as gossiped as warning. For passengers who witnessed it, something shifted. They remembered the silence. They remembered the discomfort. And many resolved not to stay quiet next time. The man never spoke publicly, but privately. The impact stayed with him, not as trauma, as confirmation. Confirmation that patience can be powerful. That documentation matters. That systems, though slow, respond when evidence is allowed to accumulate. He invested more deeply in oversight, initiatives, equity audits, accountability, frameworks, not as reaction but reinforcement. This was the world he wanted to help build, one where authority answers to evidence, not assumptions. The flight attendant disappeared from public view. Career ended. Certifications revoked. Industry. Doors closed. There was no redemption arc offered. No interviews. No platform. Just consequences. Years later, the incident would still be referenced quietly. Not for drama. For instruction. A reminder that assumptions are dangerous. That power leaves traces. That authority without humility always collapses. One flight. One decision. One refusal to look away. And a lesson that traveled farther than the plane ever did.